Hello everyone, this is Ernie Knight. You're on track 14, and I'm right over here on the side track, on the bluegrass side track that is, with either a special feature or a special program or a special interview. Felton lets me park right here on the side track so I can bring you something interesting about bluegrass music. We're glad you're with us today.
Like this here, where? It's a little bit different.
It's The Lady of Spain, recorded with a banjo and a bass fiddle.
An instrument?
We've already taped the show. We taped it in the Washington University at Washington.
Folks around Leakesville here and in the listening area of WLOE, make sure that you tune to Ernie Knight Show every day.
All right. You make the trip back every weekend to the Grand Ole Opry?
Not every weekend. We're supposed to, but we're booked out a lot. And I like tonight, we leave from here, we go to Washington, and from there on up in New York.
Bill Anderson. Bill, how are you this afternoon?
Fine, Ernie. Thank you very much for inviting me to stop by.
George Jones, a very promising young country music artist.
Thank you very much, Ernie.
It's nice to have you on the program this afternoon.
We went and played it for him at Bean Blossom. He immediately threw up.
A guy who's really down on his luck. He's got two friends left, and they're J.W. Dant and Jim Beam.
Old song time here, done by Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs many years back.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Well, some folks are looking for Bluegrass Junction and have been for years. We're right on track 14, but we don't know exactly where Bluegrass Junction is. But we're here on the Bluegrass side track with some interesting articles, some interesting interviews, some music, and who knows, we might find Bluegrass Junction.
And I did, no, there's no railroad there now. South Shelby is where the railroad's at, west.
Some of the legends and some of the lesser knowns will be joining us here on the sidetrack with Ernie Knight. Stay with us. Well, today we're talking with one of the great bluegrass mandolin players, Hershel Sizemore from Virginia. Hershel has played in bluegrass music for, I guess, I'm going to ask you, probably all his life, but welcome to XM Radio, Hershel.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me, Ernie, and asking me to come over and do a little chatting with you.
Well, I might say we're speaking from Smithfield, North Carolina, where you're being honored as one of the legends in bluegrass.
Well, I don't know about the legend. I've been around a long time. That legend may be only in my mind.
When did you start playing bluegrass?
60 years ago this year. I was 8 years old when I started.
Amazing. Amazing.
60 years ago. Never wanted to play any other kind of music, never did. I had to play with some bands that weren't quite bluegrass, but I played my brand of bluegrass all through that. I never did change.
mandolinist Hershel Sizemore. You're on the sidetrack. Tonight we're talking with Hershel Sizemore. Hershel has played off and on all his life, but starting back in the 60s, he played with a band called the Dixie Gentlemen, and that included Vassar Clemens, Rural Yarborough, and Jake Landers. Later on, he worked with Jimmy Martin and the Sunny Mountain Boys. He formed a band in the early 70s called the Shenandoah Cut-Ups, and he's also played with the Del McCoury Band along with many, many others. Let's continue with our conversation with Hershel Sizemore. What was the first band you played with?
It was a local band down in Alabama. When I was growing up out in the country, it was a bunch of just local boys in the community. And actually the boy that did the lead singing, he was more of a country singer than he was a bluegrass singer. And, I just played with anybody I could play with just to get experience as I come along, And when I had a chance in high school to join up with somebody that could play bluegrass, I had a sister that lived over at Arab, Alabama. I was raised up in northwest Alabama, by the way, over near Muscle Shoals. And my oldest sister moved over to Arab, Alabama, over in East Alabama. And Vernon Derrick lived over there. And so I quit school there at home and went over there and lived with her and went to school over there. And myself and Vernon and 3 more guys had a band in high school there for a while. And then after that, I started working with a group called the Dixie Gentlemen. And we were pretty successful in Southeast, and we all worked jobs and just played, on the weekends and nights. But we managed to record for United Artists, DOT, and Time Records, and another one or two that I don't even remember now. But we cut a lot of stuff, and a lot of it was original material.
Is that material available today?
Well, all of that's out of print anymore. Even the United Artists project's been out of print for a long time. I would like to own the masters on it. I'd put some of it back out again, but there's been so many changes, and this company bought that one, until I don't even know who owns it anymore.
Goes back to the spring of 43, when I was just a child in Mama's arms. My daddy plowed the ground and prayed that someday he could be this rundown boogie's Oklahoma farm. And one night I heard my daddy saying to my mama that he'd finally saved enough to go. California was his dream for paradise that he had seen in pictures and magazines that told him so. California cotton fields, where labor camps were filled with great men of broken dreams. California cotton fields, as close to wealth as Daddy ever knew. Almost everything we had was sold or left behind. On my daddy's plow through the fruit that mama canned. Some folks came to say farewell and see what all we had to say. Some just came to shake my daddy's hand. Yeah, the Model A was loaded down in California bound, and good luck was just about 4 days away. The only thing that I recall happening to my daddy when his dark hair turned to a silver gray. California cotton fields, where labor camps were filled with great men with broken dreams. California cotton fields, as close to wealth as Daddy ever came. Were filled with great men with broken dreams. California cotton fields, as close to wealth as Daddy ever came.
Well, you could substitute the word Alabama in there, and it would fit Hershel Sizemore to a T, because he was raised in Alabama cotton fields. That old Merle Haggard song has been done in bluegrass fashion since the early 70s, about the time that the Shenandoah Cut-Ups put that one out. Duffy and Company got a hold of it, and the Seldom Seen has been featuring it for over 30 years. That cut featuring Hershel Sizemore on the mandolin, and he's doing the tenor vocals to Wesley Golden, who was lead singer and played guitar. Tater Tate played the fiddle, the late John Palmer on bass, and Tom McKinney played the banjo. And that from County 7, that was from a Rebel long-playing album that came out in 1973 on the Shenandoah Cut-Ups. While we're into this cotton business, I'm sure that Hershel would like you to hear a song that he wrote. He wrote this, I expect, when he was just getting into the field of writing, and he mentions having picked cotton. He did do that. Did it to pay for his mandolin when he was 11 years old. And this song he wrote, which tells about the farm woes of a generation ago. Hershel again sings tenor to Wes Golden in the Shenandoah Cut-Ups. This song, The Cotton Farm.
Plow the fields and plant the seeds, hoping that this yield is better than the past. Maybe if I'm lucky I can pay off the mortgage on my old place, this rundown cotton farm. Yes, cotton farm is all my mom and daddy had to leave me. I know they had the faith in me that I could make it pay. Sometimes I feel like giving up and going to the factory. Something out there makes me wanna stay. Every spring I say that this is sure to be the last one. Maybe through another crop would only be in vain. When the harvest comes and I pay off the mortgage, I find myself waiting for the spring. Yes, cotton farm is all my mom and daddy had to leave me. I know they had the faith in me that I could make it pay. Sometimes I feel like giving up and going to the factory. Something out there makes me wanna stay. This cotton farm is all my mom and daddy had to leave me. I know they had the faith in me that I could make it pay. Sometimes I feel like giving up and going to the factory. Something out there makes me wanna stay. There's something out there make me wanna stay.
That one of Hershel Sizemore's compositions and included in the Shenandoah Cut-Up's 1973 Rebel album. That featured Wesley Golden, Hershel Sizemore, Tater Tate, and Tom McKinney. The late John Palmer played bass. We're featuring the music of Hershel Sizemore, whose career has spanned 6 decades. Hershel is just like a monument almost, recently honored in North Carolina as a legend in bluegrass. During his career, when Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs were in their heyday, he was offered a position with the band on 4 different occasions and for various personal reasons had to turn them all down. But that didn't stop him from doing a Flatt and Scruggs number every once in a while.
Sitting on the banks of the stream, when you whispered so sweetly I love you, as the waters murmured her tune. Oh, they tell me your love's like a flower in the springtime blossoms so fair, in the fall when it withers away, dear, and they tell me that's the way of your love. We were talking of days gone by, when you told me you always loved me, that for me your love would never die. Oh, they tell me your love's like a flower in the springtime blossoms so fair, in the fall when it withers away, dear, and they tell me that's the way of your love. Snow falls around us, I can see that your love is not there. Oh, they tell me your love's like a flower in the springtime blossoms so fair, in the fall when it withers away, dear, and they tell me that's the way of your love.
Well, David Parmalee sang the lead vocal, and of course Hershel Sizemore sang tenor. And that's on an album called Back in Business, an album that came out on the Hey Hollow label. And it features Bobby Hicks on fiddle, Craig Smith on banjo, and Dale Perry, who also doubled singing baritone vocals. Another composition by Hershel Sizemore is included on this album, and it's one of those instrumentals called Uncle Charlie. Who taught you to play the mandolin?
I did, not to sound boastful, but there wasn't anybody in that part of the country down there that could play. And I would see Bill Monroe on occasions. I had a sister-in-law that lived in Nashville. My brother married a girl from Nashville. And during World War II, my mom we would go up there. She'd take me and go up to Nashville, and we'd always go to the Opry. And then when I got in my early teens, they would get groups up around home there in the country and just take a whole bunch up there, you know. And I got to go to Opry a lot. And I seen Monroe was the first real good mandolin player I ever seen, you know. And it just really stuck. I never could play his stuff, but I appreciated what he done, you know. I really did.
Eli Renfro killed his wife with a long, sharp Bowie knife. He packed her up and he put her in the ground. Death by hanging was to be his fate, and oh, Eli, filled with hate, put a curse on the entire town. Can't you hear, can't you hear, when the moon is bright and clear from time to time? It's old Eli dragging chains and mourning people's names. I just hope and pray he never thinks of mine. I was walking the high road late last night. The stars were out and the moon was bright. The wind was low, you could hear for a half a mile. That awful sound came through the trees. It chilled my blood, it shook my knees. It's the kind of a thing that could make a man run wild. Can't you hear, can't you hear, when the moon is bright and clear from time to time? It's old Eli dragging chains and mourning people's names. I just hope and pray he never thinks of mine. So if you leave town before I do, don't look back, I'm a-comin' too. I'm packing my things and I'm going far away. Well, it's said that you can't run away from a curse, but maybe this time I'll be the first. There really ain't nobody here gonna make me stay. Can't you hear, can't you hear, when the moon is bright and clear from time to time? it's old Eli dragging chains and morning people's names. I just hope and pray he never thinks of mine.
Well, we'll call that innovative because that particular cut has a new bluegrass instrument on it. So let's say that Hershel Sizemore and the band was very innovative in 1973 when the Shenandoah Cut-Ups recorded that Eli Renfro, the old Don Humphreys song. And more recently, I guess, it was done by Del McCurry and the Dixie Pals. Don't know if Hershel was responsible for getting that into the other band or vice versa. But Hershel did join in on that. Tom McKinney sang the lead, and Hershel and the tenor. And the new bluegrass instrument, you're going to say it was the tambourine. And I'll confess, we're asking questions, and we want you to pay attention. Ronnie Freeland was playing the tambourine, and no, that's not the new bluegrass instrument, because heaven knows Polly Lewis has played the tambourine with the Lewis family for years and years. But in this case, it was Wesley Golden playing the nail, the sound of the song on Eli Renfro. Well, folks, you're on the sidetrack with Ernie Knight here on Bluegrass Junction, or well, we're mighty close to it, and we're talking today with bluegrass legend Hershel Sizemore. You play a Gibson mandolin?
Yeah, for years on end, I've played nothing but Gibson. I've got 3 Lord Lowers, 1923 Lord Lowers, and also I've got a couple that of the new master model that are varnished, like the old ones that Gibson has made and given to me. And this fall, hopefully by October, at IBMA out in Louisville, we hope to present a new signature model from Gibson.
Which mandolin are you playing here today?
1923 Gibson F5 Lord Lower.
Do you play all 3 of those lowers?
Yes, I alternate play one, because they all need to be played.
And can you tell the difference between them?
Yeah, there's difference in all of them. It's just like Martin guitars or anything. Sometimes the difference in the sound or the feel is the setup on them. But I try to keep all mine set up, pretty much the same, so I can just go from one to the other. And there's just a little bit of difference in the tone of them, which any acoustical instrument there would be, but they're all great. They're something to really be appreciated.
It's probably the most expensive instrument in bluegrass music, is the lower?
I would say so. If there's anything more expensive, I don't know about it. I would say they are.
How many are there in existence?
Well, that's arguable. I don't really know. I don't think there was ever that many made. And just a little forethought would tell you that there wasn't, because we're talking about 1923 when money was really tight, just before the Depression. And my understanding, this come from some of the older guys that worked at the Gibson factory back then, and I learned this back in the early 60s, and they were getting quite old then. But in order to get a 1923 lower, which sold for $250 with the hard shell case, which don't seem like much money now, but that was a lot of money then. But people had to make a down payment on them, a deposit on them, before they would ever, make the mandolin and ship it to the dealership.
Roanoke, and that fabulous instrumental played by Hershel Sizemore on his Lord Lower mandolin, one of his three. And today we're talking with Hershel Sizemore and featuring his music on the sidetrack with Ernie Knight. And we're glad to have you along with us. That particular song was from an album called Back in Business, actually a compact disc which Hershel issued. It was put out on the Hey Hollow album label, and it featured Bobby Hicks on fiddle, Craig Smith on banjo, David Parmalee on lead vocals and guitar, and Dale Perry on bass and bass vocals.
You went away and left me lonely. No one else could take your place. When each long day at last is over, I long to see your smiling face. I'm alone and broken hearted since you left me all alone. I don't know why you left me lonely. I only know that you are gone. If you love me kind and truly, half as much as I love you, you wouldn't leave me here so lonely, break my heart the way you do. I'm alone and broken hearted since you left me all alone. I don't know why you left me lonely. I only know that you are gone. Each day, it seems my love for you is endless, even though you've gone away. I'm alone and broken hearted since you left me all alone. I don't know why you left me lonely. I only know that you are gone.
Sizemore from his 1993 album called Back in Business, and that's the song Hershel wrote. And it was featuring David Parmalee on the lead vocal, and of course Hershel was singing tenor. This song is called Alone and Broken Hearted. Bobby Hicks played fiddle, Craig Smith played banjo, and Dale Perry played bass. Hershel Sizemore was the youngest of 10 children, grew up on a cotton farm in Alabama, and taught himself to play the mandolin, one of the finest mandolin players in the world. Well, you've heard Ralph Stanley and the Clinch Mountain Boys play Daybreak in Dixie, and now you heard it by Hershel Sizemore on the mandolin, that Bill Napier tune. And that's a real wake-up tune if you listen to it early in the morning. Hershel Sizemore is our guest. I'm Ernie Knight. You're listening to us. We're on the side track really close to Bluegrass Junction. And today our guest is the famed mandolinist, composer, singer, and now you know it, a master of ceremonies, Hershel Sizemore. He's with us, and we recorded him in Smithfield, North Carolina, when he was honored as a legend in bluegrass. Hershel was a member of the Bluegrass Cardinals for a number of years, and when called upon, he could always do a good job as a master of ceremonies.
We're going to do a new number now that we just finished recording on a project that's coming out sometime later on this summer. It's entitled It's in My Mind to Wonder.
It was in my mind to wonder, so I left my mountain home. I left my dear old parents all alone. I was seeking fame and fortune, but neither have I found. Now it's in my mind to turn my life around. There's a rustic little cabin in the mountains far away. That's where I'd like to wander back someday. Where the hearts that I had broken, I hope somehow to mend. Now it's in my mind to wander back again. With a memory on my mind of a rustic little cabin in the pines, where the mountain laurel's blooming and the honeysuckle vines. Now it's in my mind to wander back sometime. There's a rustic little cabin in the mountains far away. That's where I'd like to wander back someday. Where the hearts that I have broken, I hope somehow to mend. Now it's in my mind to wander back again. There's a rustic little cabin in the mountains far away. That's where I'd like to wander back someday. Where the hearts that I have broken, I hope somehow to mend. Now it's in my mind to wander back again. Now it's in my mind to wander back again.
In my mind to...
Tune that Mona Ramsey, a lady from down Sneeville, Tennessee, wrote, and it's entitled Trouble the Waters.
By the pool of Bethesda, many people gathered, waiting to be healed and whole again. At a certain season, an angel stirred the waters, and there would one be cleansed who first stepped in. Troubled the water, yes, troubled the water for me. I need cleansing, setting, have to be set free from all sin, infirmity, and infirmity. Trouble the waters, yes, trouble the waters for me. On his way to the temple, Jesus saw the people Love for them caused him to stop and talk, realizing faith from a man who came so often. He said to them, "Rise, take your bed and walk. Trouble the water for me. I need cleansing and setting free from all sin, infirmity. Trouble the waters, yes, trouble the waters for me. Trouble the water, yes, trouble the water for me. I need cleansing and setting free, to be set free from all sin and infirmity. Trouble the water for me. Trouble the waters for me.
Hershel Sizemore and the Bluegrass Cardinals, and that particular song, Trouble the Water, featuring the mandolin quite prominently, Greg Luck, Keith Pirtle, Les Deaton, Don Pomerly, and Hershel Sizemore made up that version of the Bluegrass Cardinals, and that recorded in Summersville, West Virginia on June 24th, 1994. You're on the sidetrack with Ernie Knight. We're really close to Bluegrass Junction, and today we're featuring the living legend, Hershel Sizemore.
We're going to slow it down just a little bit now and let the trio do a number that the Cardinals have had recorded for a long time. And we've got some of them on cassette tape out here today, and we'll have all those set up a little later on. It's one entitled She Keeps Hanging On.
Well, it's early and I'm home late one more time. What will I do when I see her and she's been crying? What's the use? No excuse. I know I've done wrong, but she must know that I love her, for she keeps hanging on. She just sits there and says nothing at all. Why don't she get mad and throw things against the wall? It's not her style, it drives me wild to know I've done wrong, but she must know that I love her, for she keeps hanging on. I hear her crying when she thinks that I'm asleep. God knows I really didn't mean to make her weep. Another place, a pretty face will cause me to do wrong, but she must know that I love her, for she keeps hanging on. But she must know that I love her, for she keeps hanging on.
Prominently featuring the mandolin of Hershel Sizemore, the Bluegrass Cardinals, in a live performance back in 1994, and She Keeps Hanging On. Well, you're on the sidetrack with Ernie Knight. We're mighty close to Bluegrass Junction, and we're featuring the music of mandolinist Hershel Sizemore. Hershel learned to play mandolin himself while living in Alabama, and he listened to the Grand Ole Opry, visited the Opry, and eventually met Bill Monroe. After he and Bill became friends, Monroe would kid Hershel about not playing it right because he didn't play like Monroe's style. But then, tellingly, he would confide in Sizemore how much he respected him. An article in Mandolin Magazine says, "You play what you hear in your head just like I did," the father of bluegrass once said to Sizemore. Hershel never copied anybody. He played it his own way.
I'll never love no one else but my darling, even though we both had to part. I'll never love no one else but my darling. Wherever she goes, she'll always have my heart. And the most people say have to make the heart go cold, but the kind of love we had in each other's heart we'll hold. I'll never love no one else but my darling, as we travel down two different lonely roads. I'll never let no one take your place, my darling, for you know you meant the world to me. I'll never let no one take your place, my darling, for your love won't let my poor heart beat. And the more people say have to make that heart grow cold, but the kind of love we had in each other's heart we'll hold. I'll never let no one take your place, my darling, as we travel down two different lonely roads.
Dale McCurry and the Dixie Pals, and prominently featuring the mandolin of Hershel Sizemore on No One But My Darling. That from Rebel 1622, a Rebel long play album, with Dale McCurry featured as lead singer, and his brother Jerry also on lead vocal and playing the bass, Dick Smith on banjo, Sonny Miller on fiddle, and of course Hershel Sizemore on mandolin.
I know a man who once was a loser. I know a man that once was a drunk. I know a man that once was a sinner, but he went out one day and made an altar out of a stump. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. We don't need nobody to tell us what it's all about. We can't afford your fancy preaching. We can't afford your fancy church. We can't afford your fancy singing, for you know Jesus has a lot of poor people out doing his work. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. Me and Jesus don't need nobody to tell us what it's all about. Jesus brought me through all of my heartaches. Jesus brought me through all of my trials. Jesus brought me through all of my troubles. And you know Jesus is not gonna forsake me now. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. We don't need nobody to tell us what it's all about. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. Me and Jesus got it all worked out. Me and Jesus got our own thing going. We don't need nobody to tell us what it's all about.
That one of the two gospel songs on the Dale McCurry and the Dixie Pals album, Take Me to the Mountains, and featuring Hershel Sizemore on mandolin. That band, which performed back in the 80s, included Dale's brother Jerry McCurry on bass, Dick Smith on banjo and baritone vocals, and Sonny Miller on fiddle. You're on the sidetrack. We're real close to Bluegrass Junction, and we're featuring the music of Hershel Sizemore. You're on the sidetrack. We're real close to Bluegrass Junction, and we're featuring the music of Hershel Sizemore.
Well, I wish I was an apple hanging on a tree. Every time Cindy passed, she'd take a bite of me. Get along home, home, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, home, Cindy, I'm gonna leave you now. You ought to see my Cindy, she lives way down south. She's so sweet, the honeybees swarm around her mouth. Get along home, home, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, home, Cindy, I'll marry you somehow. I went to see my Cindy, she was standing in the door. Shoes and stockings in her hand and her feet all over the floor. Get along home, home, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, home, Cindy, I'll marry you someday. Now don't you talk about my Cindy. Cindy in the summertime, Cindy in the fall. If I can't have my Cindy, I won't have none at all. Get along home, home, Cindy, get along home. Get along home, home, Cindy, I'm gonna leave you now.
Dale McCurry and the Dixie Pals, and featuring Hershel Sizemore on that hot mandolin break. Hershel always said he was from L.A. He meant Lower Alabama. He picked cotton as a kid to earn the money to buy a mandolin when he was 11 years old, and according to the story, he paid off the mandolin. Shows his work ethic and his dedication from even childhood. You're on the sidetrack. We're real close to Bluegrass Junction, and this is Ernie Knight. Today we're featuring the music of Hershel Sizemore, and in several of the configurations of the bands he's played with during his long and illustrious career. Hershel Sizemore, great mandolin player.
Here Here the labor is so hard, and the workers are so tired, and our weary hearts are yearning for a rest. And we find we're getting anxious to be in that happy land where we'll receive such peace and happiness. Wait a little longer, please, Jesus. There's so many still wandering out in sin. Just a little longer, please, Jesus. A few more days to get our loved ones in. We may look into the skies, and tears will fill our eyes, and our burdened hearts grow heavier with each day. First we cry, oh Lord, please come and take your children home. And then we look around us and we say, just a little longer, please, Jesus. There's so many still wandering out in sin. Just a little longer, please, Jesus. A few more days to get our loved ones in. The family scattered here and there, but Lord, we love them dear, and maybe we can help them find the way. But if waiting is the cause, then they might not be lost. And here's the only reason why we say, wait a little longer, please, Jesus. There's so many still wandering out in sin. Just a little longer, please, Jesus. A few more days to get our loved ones in.
Dale McCurry and the Dixie Pals, primarily Dale and Jerry, the brothers, singing on Wait a Little Longer, Please, Jesus. And that gospel song featuring just the mandolin of Hershel Sizemore and the guitar of Dale McCurry. That from an album called Take Me to the Mountains, recorded by the Rebel label back in the 1980s. You're on the sidetrack with us today. We're real close to Bluegrass Junction. This is Ernie Knight, and we're conversing with Hershel Sizemore and featuring Hershel on today's program. Hershel Sizemore and another of his compositions. That one he named Sandy Ridge after the town in North Carolina. Used to go up there every December to Sandy Ridge to see the Flatt and Scruggs show at the Sandy Ridge School. Hershel thought about the tobacco fields around Sandy Ridge when he named that tune. You're on the sidetrack with Ernie Knight. Today's guest is Hershel Sizemore, a living legend, and they said so in Smithfield, North Carolina, where he was honored recently as a legend in bluegrass music. We're glad to have you aboard with us today. That particular Sandy Ridge song came from a new album, fairly new, on Hay Holler, and it's called My Style. The fellow who wrote the liner notes on there played some on it. Alan Bobby said there can be no doubt that Hershel Sizemore is one of the greatest ever, and he meant mandolin players, and Hershel certainly is. Hershel says, I wrote this tune in 1978 when I was working with Dale McCurry. I named it for my son Lee, but never got around to recording it until now. I was surprised when Lee walked into the studio when we were recording and was glad that he got to see and hear his name tune recorded. You're on the sidetrack with us. This is Ernie Knight, and we're featuring the music of Hershel Sizemore, great mandolin player and a legend in bluegrass music. We're talking with Hershel Sizemore, one of the foremost mandolin players in bluegrass music. Hershel, tell us some of the bands you've played with.
Well, like I said earlier, I started out with a group down in Alabama called the Dixie Gentlemen, and I worked a while with a group out of Nashville, Bobby Smith and the boys from Shiloh, and I worked a couple of years with Jimmy Martin, and I worked 5 years, was a founding member of the Shenandoah Cut-Ups, and I had a group called Country Grass after that for 2 or 3 years.
Country Grass recorded an album, as I recall.
Right, we did.
Who was on that?
Myself, Tom McKinney on banjo, Wes Golding on guitar, Wayne Golden on bass, and vocals, and of course Wesley on vocals. Tom Gray come in and did some of the bass, overdubbed some bass on it, and Ricky Skaggs played fiddle.
How about that? Did you record any with Jimmy Martin when you were playing as a Sunny Mountain Boy?
No, I never did record anything with him. It just didn't work out that way.
But you did a lot of recording as mandolin player for the Bluegrass Cardinals.
Yeah, we during the time that I worked with Don Parmley and the Bluegrass Cardinals, I think we did about 4 or 5 albums, and I played mandolin on all of them.
And then you left music for a while.
Well, I didn't actually leave. I was working at it all the time. People thought I left because I wasn't out on the road, but I was getting involved with a gentleman in Roanoke, Virginia by the name of John Lawless that owns AccuTab Publications. I started doing instructional videos and books and that sort of thing for him, and also I went in partners with him on what we call a Roanoke Bluegrass Weekend, which is a teaching seminar that we have every November, and it'll be the second weekend in November this year. We run from Friday through Sunday, and we have some of the greatest pickers in bluegrass there as teachers. This year we're going to have Josh Graves on dobro, Kenny Baker on fiddle, Alan Shelton on banjo. I'll be doing some teaching, and we will also have Rob Ikes on dobro, Tim Stafford on guitar, and that's just some of the people that I can remember right now, and I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out.
Hershel Sizemore said when he was a boy, 2 old-time fiddlers that he knew used to play Cotton Eye Joe. He said he liked the tune and wanted to include it in his recording, and that from an album on Hay Hollow, featuring Hershel Sizemore on mandolin, Terry Balcom on banjo, Jimmy Haley on guitar, Ron Stewart on fiddle, Eddie Biggerstaff on bass fiddle, and Alan Bobby even made an appearance in there on a couple of cuts. That album called My Style, featuring the mandolin of Hershel Sizemore. You're on the sidetrack with us. We're mighty close to Bluegrass Junction. you've influenced a lot of upcoming bluegrass musicians.
Well, I've tried, when I was growing up and I was around other musicians, it used to be kind of a selfish thing, you know, kind of I'll keep it to myself type thing. And I just never thought it ought to be that way, because after all, it's a God-given talent, and I know that we have to work on it to develop it. But I always felt like, you know, that if I can help somebody along the way, and if they appreciate something I do, it's just a moral obligation to show it to them. Because, you know, when we lay down and die, we're not going to take that with us, that's for sure.
You're on the sidetrack with Ernie Knight. We're mighty close to Bluegrass Junction, and today we're honoring Hershel Sizemore, a living legend, mandolin player, honored in North Carolina, along with a lot of other bluegrass musicians, for his contributions to bluegrass music. Hershel, how many bluegrass songs have you written?
Probably, I would say probably close to 50.
And have artists recorded some of them?
Yes, I wrote one tune. I started writing back in the 50s, but I never had much success with the earlier stuff that I wrote, you know. But I wrote one instrumental that luckily has become a standard, and I'm really thankful for that. A tune entitled Rebecca, a tune that I wrote for my mom because she always encouraged me in the music, and she was an old-time guitar player when she was growing up. And I always wanted to do something to honor her for, you know, her contribution for me being here. And I wrote this tune, and I named it for my mom.
Hershel Sizemore on the mandolin and playing his own song, Rebecca, named for his mom. That from a 1979 album called Bounce Away, and it featured Del McCurry on guitar, Tom McKinney on banjo, Sonny Miller on fiddle, and John Palmer on bass. The liner notes were written by mandolist Jesse McReynolds, who called Hershel a personal friend, and said, "If you like hot, clean, and tasteful mandolin picking, you'll find it here." We're talking with the great mandolin player Hershel Sizemore on the sidetrack. Let's continue with our conversation. Folks, we're talking with Hershel Sizemore, nationally known mandolin player, performer, artist. Hershel, you're participating in a tribute show here today at Smithfield. Who are you playing with, and what's on the agenda?
Well, Marshall Stevenson put this show together, and he asked myself and Alan Shelton and Tater Tate and John Shuffler and Curly Seckler and Josh Graves, Kenny Baker, a lot of the guys that had been around a long time. Les Sandy, Les is here today. He's a fiddle player that played with Monroe back in the 50s. And Marshall just thought it would be nice to bring a lot of us old guys back together again and play a little bit of the old music, you know, for people. And it seems that people still want to hear it because we've got an auditorium full of people.
The most recent Hershel Sizemore CD that I have is called Back in Business, and that means you're back.
Well, I've got a one that I recorded after that called My Style, which is all instrumental, and that has done quite well for me. I've got Terry Balcom on banjo, Jimmy Haley on guitar, Eddie Biggerstaff on bass, Ron Stewart on fiddle, and Alan Bobby come in and played some harmony for me on a couple of the tunes, and then played lead guitar on a tune called Charmaine, which was a little bit far out for me. It's an old big band tune from back in the 20s. And I just really liked the tune, and we just adapted it to bluegrass and just played it nothing but bluegrass. And Alan just took an outstanding break on the guitar on it. Of course, anything he plays, he's going to play well. You can bet on that.
Well, it's not the first time that music outside of bluegrass has been brought in.
No.
Don Reno did it, Earl Scruggs did it, and countless other musicians.
Right. Well, Monroe did it too. You know, a lot of people forget that, but he brought some of the old country stuff, Jimmy Rogers yodel tunes in, you know, and that was some of the first material that he recorded and used. And it's not exactly what the song is, if it's a good song or tune. If it's a good song or tune, it's the way you play it, you know. If you play it with the bluegrass instruments and play bluegrass timing, you know, it's bluegrass as far as I'm concerned. Dale McCurry now, Dale's recording a lot of variations in music, you know, that he's doing, but it's bluegrass, because Dale's like myself, that's all he knows, all he wants to do, and he's doing a great job of it.
How has Oh Brother affected bluegrass music?
Well, I think it's like Deliverance, you know, when that came out, and you had Eric Weisberg and his buddy doing Arthur Smith and Don Reno's tune, you know. It just brought a lot of attention to bluegrass, and hopefully every time something like that happens, you know, we win over, you know, some more people, because I've said a lot of times that bluegrass has never got a fair shake like country music, and had, you know, the national exposure or international exposure and backing that it should have. And basically, it doesn't matter what walk of life people comes from. What they need is to see a live concert, and usually that's all it takes. I don't care if they was raised up on pop, rock, or Bach. It doesn't matter. If they see a live concert and it's done well, it's a music that most people learn to appreciate and enjoy.
That yet another Hershel Sizemore composition, a tune he calls Fancy Gap, and Hershel said going down Fancy Gap Mountain through the years and remembering how the cars wanted to go really fast, it just seemed to go with the flow of this tune. We're honoring Hershel Sizemore as a living legend. He was named a legend at Smithfield, North Carolina, and honored there just a few weeks ago. We're talking with Hershel Sizemore backstage at the Legends of Bluegrass show in Smithfield, North Carolina. Hershel, you're truly a legend. You're in the right company, and we thank you for being with us today.
Well, Ernie, I appreciate you asking me to come in and chat with you a minute. As most people know that know me, I've always got something to say. and especially for bluegrass. I love the music, and I intend to play as long as I possibly can.
Where could someone see Hershel Sizemore play mandolin next after this show?
Well, I've got several things that I'll be doing this summer, and I've got a website that is being constructed now, and it's simply just www.HershelSizemore, all one word, .com, and they can go to the website and get information on mandolins or recordings, instructional videos, whatever they have questions about.
This is Ernie Knight, and you're on the Bluegrass Sidetrack. We're mighty close to Bluegrass Junction, and this edition of the Sidetrack is featuring the music of Hershel Sizemore. Now in his late 60s, Hershel is gaining even greater respect and influence. He appears every November at the Roanoke Bluegrass Weekend, and will also be seen as a guest artist on a lot of bluegrass sessions and stage appearances by other musicians. We met with Hershel in Smithfield, North Carolina, back in March when he was honored as a legend in bluegrass. It's about time to wrap up this interview with Hershel, and we're going to let the man himself do it in style. You're here on the Railroad Sidetrack with Ernie Knight, and today we're talking with Hershel Sizemore. Hershel not only is a great mandolin player and singer and composer, he also served as a bluegrass master of ceremonies with some of the bands he performed with, particularly this particular set with the Bluegrass Cardinals. And he always liked to joke a bit and pretend, even though he knew exactly where he was going, that maybe he had to look a little bit and hunt a little bit on that mandolin just to find the key or the note. But this I recorded on June the 24th of 1994. Let's join Hershel on stage at the Music of the Mountains Festival in Summersville, West Virginia.
Guys around today, thank you. We're going to call the guys around. They get to star on this. Don says
act like the Oak Ridge Boys.
Yeah, they feel like the Oak Ridge Boys when they get to do this. But we're going to do an old English ballad for you. If you're not English, we're going to do it anyway. I guess there's a lot of us that's not. I've been called worse. Are we ready? Yeah, we're ready. They've been waiting on me. Yeah, that's what they always say. Well, if I can find this thing, it's in D sharp. Let's see.
One above D.
One above D, he says. Right. This is an old folk song that's been around for many years, and we included it on the new project, one entitled Mary of the Wild Moor.
It was on one cold winter's night, and the winds blew across the wild moor. Poor Mary came wandering with a child in her arms when she came to her own father's door. Oh, Father, she cried, come down and open the door, for the child in my arms will perish and die from the winds that blow across the wild moor. But the old man was deaf to her cries, not a sound of her voice did he hear, for the watchdogs did howl, and the village bell tolled, and the winds blew across the wild moor. Oh, how the old man must have felt when he came to the door the next morn. There he found Mary dead but the child still alive, held close in his dead mother's arms. Now the villagers point out the spot, and the willows droop over the door where poor Mary died. Watch the sweet village bride from the winds that blow across the wild moor, from the winds that blow across the wild moor.
That Mary of the Wild Moor featured Hershel Sizemore on the mandolin, just the mandolin and the bass on that number, recorded live in Summersville, West Virginia. Mary of the Wild Moor, one of the songs featured by the Bluegrass Cardinals. Well, it's just about impossible to capsulize a performer like Hershel Sizemore in such a short period of time, but we're trying to do that, featuring the music and the mandolin, or the mandolins, I should say, all three of those Lord Lores of Hershel Sizemore. You're on the sidetrack, the railroad sidetrack, with Ernie Knight. Well, what do you have for us now, Hershel?
We're going to close out with a number that was recorded on a live project down in Nashville, Tennessee at the Station Inn. And we'll just say good night to you, but there's a lot of more good bluegrass picking and singing coming. This is entitled Home is Where the Heart Is.
Nestling in the pine trees of the mountain, down along the road I love so well. There I know my dear old mother's waiting, waiting, and I know she always will. Home is where the heart is, they tell me. Many minutes try to travel that lonesome road. You'll never find a pal as true as mother. You'll never find a place as sweet as home. Many years ago I left my old home. I started out to ramble all around. If ever I get back to where I came from, gonna build a little home, settle down. Home is where the heart is, they tell me. Many minutes try to travel that lonesome road. You'll never find a pal as true as mother. You'll never find a place as sweet as home. Home is where the heart is, they tell me. Many minutes try to travel that lonesome road. You'll never find a pal as true as mother. You'll never find a place as sweet as home.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Hershel, and good night. Well, it's been fun. This has been a look at the career of Hershel Sizemore, who has influenced two generations of mandolin players. Hershel has for many years been one of the foremost innovators of mandolin music with his smooth, distinctive sound and style. You're on the sidetrack with Ernie Knight. We want to thank you for listening, and thanks again, Hershel.